Well, I'll tell you, this was a case that really challenged my problem-solving skills. This was a dislocated CZ70, and my first thought would be that we would make basically some scleral flaps to cover it. And I did these like I was making scleral belt loops for a buckle, only I amputated the posterior edge so that way they would be a flap. And I was going to use kind of a retro-loaded needle with some Gortex suture, and basically was just going to lasso that loose haptic where the suture had broken and pull it up and just tie it off and be done. Best laid plans. You can see I started out with a 30 gauge needle, then a 27 gauge needle, and basically this Gore-Tex is impossible to thread. So I thought, you know what, I'll just pass it to myself with max grip forceps. My mistake here was actually trying to get that Gore-Tex suture and my max grip through one of the valve cannulas. So basically pull things out, get rid of the cannula, and now things slide in fine. And things were going well. I used, I think in the first attempt, a hook here. As I passed it to myself, I hooked it around, thought I was around the haptic here. This is sped up just a bit. And so when I grabbed the suture, I was able to exit the suture. It looked like it was attached to the haptic of the way the lens moved, and pull it up and through, and hoping to tighten things up here, and suddenly I've got just my suture. So I obviously wasn't around that haptic. So now I'm going to be a little more aggressive with the lens. I'm going to move it over with the hook so that I can clearly see, and oh no, I broke the other suture. And these sutures after 10 or 15 years get really old. The Prolene sutures do. And so fortunately, by the grace of God, this lens stayed up in the front of the eye. So I was able to actually go back in and take my max grip forceps, and now actually the lens was sitting at a really nice angle for me, and I was able to actually hand this suture, which was now around the haptic, to myself with another max grip through a paracentesis, grab it back, and now I pull it up, and now it's in position and hopefully going to stay in position. I kept the needle on one end of this suture and was able to actually go ahead and just pass that partial thickness through the sclera. Just needed something to anchor it, and then tie it underneath that flap. Trim off the edges. The conjunctiva will hold that flap posteriorly and cover our suture. But now I need to go and investigate. Was this really a broken suture? Is this a damaged haptic? Can I work with this? So I'm taking my hook in now, and I'm just basically going to see that edge of the haptic, and I can see the eyelet there. And so I know that there's a free eyelet, that there's no suture on it. So I decide I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. So I make my conjunctival peritomy. I make my scleral tunnel that I'm going to amputate the posterior edge for, and that becomes my scleral flap. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in with my trocar, but no cannula. And I'm going to actually be wise enough to make myself a paracentesis 180 degrees away from this area so that I can hand myself the suture with two max grip forceps. So now I'm in with the max grip. I go under the haptic so that I can get the suture up through it. I'm able to tilt it around, come in on the opposite side with another pair of max grips, grab that suture. I'm going to make sure it's around that haptic, and I'm going to go back in with my max grip suture or forceps here to just grab this Gore-Tex suture, and I will externalize the suture. This was a difficult angle actually, but I'm able to see it and get in there, be in front of my IOL or in front of my haptic, pull it out, and then you can see moment of truth. When we pull on both edges of the suture, does the lens center, or does the suture come out? And the lens centers up actually beautifully. So we basically did a bilateral rescue as far as these Gortex sutures are concerned. The thing I really love about the Gortex sutures is that they should last for the rest of this patient's life. We shouldn't have the same issues with breakage that we see with older Prolene sutures. And once we get things closed up, patient looks rather well and did extremely well. Thank you so much for watching.